Hi, I'm Koos Tompe. Listen to the weekly Dartscast and enjoy it.
Hello and welcome to an episode of the weekly Dartscast. We're back for a second episode of the week. I'm Alex Moss, and alongside me, darts statistician Burton DeWitt. How are you doing, and how was your Nando's yesterday?
Well, I don't know if I mentioned that on the show, but yes, I did. Since it was the Premier League final, I decided what more English thing to do than to get a Nando's after it. But it was very good. First time I had it in months, probably last time for months, but I definitely needed a Nando's last night. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing good, thank you. And Nando's, get in touch about the sponsorship. We'd love to hear from you. And it's a lot of World Cup talk for this episode. The PDC World Cup of Darts is only a few days away when we're talking on this Tuesday. It gets underway on Thursday, and Wales, they're the favourites with the bookmakers to take home the title in Frankfurt this weekend. But which teams do you think are going to be the biggest threats to Gerwyn Price and Johnny Clayton winning their second World Cup this week?
Well, I think it starts from the very first round, and that's with the Philippines. And I don't think we've seen the best from Lawrence Ilagan, either at the World Cup or at the World Championships. We've seen flashes on the European Tour, obviously in soft tip. He's a world champ. He's one of the best soft tip players. But we haven't seen him bring his best steel tip game when he's come over to the UK or when he's come over to Germany for either the World Championships or the World Cup. He's partnered now with someone who we haven't seen at all in RJ Escaros. And RJ Escaros had a great run to qualify, beating Noel Malikdem, who's represented the Philippines 2 of the 3 years since they were brought back into the into the field in 2019, and Paulo Nebrita, who was supposed to be in the field last year but had to withdraw due to COVID vaccine regulations. But he's beaten the 2 other people who have qualified alongside Ilagan recently to represent the Philippines. So we don't know what to expect from him. But I think there's just gears that we've not yet seen Lawrence Ilagan bring to that big stage, and one of these years he will. And that is not a tie you want to have in the first round because, well, even though we haven't seen Escaros, he must be a pretty good competitor to have beaten the players he did to qualify. So that's a tough tie. I'm not saying that Wales will go out, but in the pairs format, we don't know what's going to happen. And I would not want to draw Philippines, and we'll get to that later in the first round ties we're going to. I picked the Philippines as one of the 4 unseeded teams I would not want it to have drawn if I were a seeded team. But even if they get past that, the defending runners-up potentially come in the second round. And Mensur Suljovic has been struggling as of late, although there's been flashes that he's still the Mensur Suljovic of old. Robbie John Rodriguez just had a terrible performance today, but overall has come up leaps and bounds over the last year. And I should say by today, I mean after the Tuesday Players Championship event. So we're recording this Tuesday night. We haven't yet seen what has happened at Players Championship 17, but we have seen Players Championship 16. So Wales has gotten a tricky draw, if not necessarily difficult, a tricky one, both for those first 2 rounds. But even if they get past it, Germany potentially waits in the quarterfinals. But on being the host nation, the German team is just a really good team. Martin Schindler is one of the breakthrough players over the last year. Gabriel Clemens has regressed a bit, but is still a formidable foe. Both of those could beat either of the Welsh players if Wales gets there. And then obviously Netherlands, even without Michael van Gerwen, they do have the only major ranking champion so far this season in Danny Noppert, and he's partnered with someone who just averaged nearly 110 in a PDC final on Tuesday. Granted, he lost that final. So there's a lot of tough teams on Wales' half of the draw, but it starts with that Philippines match in the first round, and that is where the best chance to beat them comes. So while there are a lot of teams that can deny Wales in the bottom half of the bracket, I'm going to say the biggest challenge is that first round, because if that Filipino pair clicks, they have the game, especially in the pairs format, to beat Wales.
But I'll go in the opposite direction on this one, and I think Wales will be pretty happy with the draw they've got there with the Philippines. And I was listening to an interview that a friend of the show, Kevin Buff, did with the PDC chief exec, Matt Porter, a few days ago, and he was talking about the return of the Asian Tour and how difficult it's been to get darts going back in that area of the world. And I think we have seen that the last couple of years when we have seen these teams come over to Europe to play in the World Cup, to play in the World Championship, that match practice has been a little bit lacking. So for me, I think Wales, Gerwyn Price, Johnny Clayton will be quietly confident about that first round tie. And of course, they won the title in 2020. It was the start of Johnny Clayton, this run that he's been on over the last 18 months. But even last year, they came very close to retaining the title. They made the final session and lost 4-3 in that doubles decider to Scotland, despite averaging 103 in that game. And we've just seen Johnny Clayton, when you're listening to this a couple of days ago, lose his Premier League title, lose to Joe Cullen 10-4 in the semi-finals, despite being overall, you'd say that the best player during the league season in the Premier League. Gerwyn Price not been at his best so far this year, but I think they're both going to be up for this and to win the title back for Wales. And I think they're in a good section of the draw. I think the Philippines, I'd expect them to get past them. After that, as you say, you're probably expecting it's going to be Austria in the second round. Finland, since they made the semi-finals in 2013, they've only won one game in the next eight years since then. As you say, last year it was one of the stories of the year, wasn't it? Austria getting to the World Cup final, Mensah and Roby-John, and how well they played in that semi-final against England. I think it was Mensah who averaged 109 and Roby-John averaging 102, and they dropped just 2 legs between them to win that semi-final in straight singles, 4-1 and 4-1. So that's going to be a tricky one. And even last year, Wales, when they got to the semi-finals, they could have gone out as early as the second round against Lithuania. They got pushed to a doubles decider, and that went to 7 legs. That went to a deciding leg. And that's what you get really with this format as well, is the short format. I know some people have called for it to be maybe just pairs. I know I've said it in the past as well, but you look at the shorter format and it does give maybe more of a chance of the lesser nations of picking up a win in those first couple of singles games and taking it to the doubles, and that is when the pressure really ramps up. But for me, I do expect Wales to get through to that final day, and there it could be Germany, the home nation, and the semi-finals could potentially be the Netherlands, that new lineup of Danny Noppert and Dirk van Dijvenbode. But for me, I do think Wales are going to get through that, and I do expect to see them competing for that title on Sunday night in the final. And they are the favourites with the bookmakers 7-4. There's a lot of quality in the field. I'd probably say their biggest threat could come in the top half of the draw. It could come in the final with the likes of England, Belgium, Australia, the defending champions, Scotland, Poland as an outsider in there as well. But for me, I think Wales are going to be happy with the draw, and I'd be surprised if we don't see them in the final on Sunday night.
I don't see how Poland can make the final when they're losing the first round to the United States. That's a different story.
Fair point.
Of course, last year we saw a popular winner with John Henderson winning his first PDC title alongside Peter Wright as Scotland won their second World Cup in 3 years. How far do you think the defending champions will go, though?
Yeah, that is a tricky one. And thinking back to last year, it was one of the feel-good stories, wasn't it, in darts, that we sometimes get John Henderson winning his first PDC title, and to do it in the World Cup as well. I know he played the World Cup a few years before alongside Robert Thornton, who at the time, he's a major champion, but he was on the decline. To play alongside one of the top 2 Scottish players in Peter Wright last year, and to go and win the whole thing was a great story. And the way they did it as well, winning the doubles deciders against the Netherlands in the quarterfinals, Wales in the semi-finals, and then coming from a game down to beat Austria in the final. And the record they had in the pairs as well, 4-0, that says a lot, doesn't it? And we probably thought that John Henderson, after winning the World Cup, the boost that he'd have got from that of confidence, he would have kicked on. Unfortunately for him, that's not been the case. We didn't see him make the World Championship, and we're seen today actually make a quarter-final, which was a much-needed run, I think, going into this week in the defence of that title, because aside from that, it's not been a great run for John Henderson since winning that World Cup. He hasn't, to borrow a word from Rod Studd, he hasn't built on the momentum of that title. And even Peter Wright as well, I think you could say he's been, since becoming a 2-time world champion at the start of the year, and a few months later since becoming world number 1, it's been very indifferent from him. We usually expect him to be a bit more consistent, but the chopping and changing of the darts, it seems to be a lot more frequent than, it was pretty frequent before, but it seems to be pretty much every tournament now he's changing his darts, and it seems like he's lacking a little bit of that consistency that we all know. And I think looking at their draw, Hong Kong in the first round, you've got 2 debutants they're going up against, and you can't take any nation for granted. Peter Wright will tell you that when they lost to Singapore a few years ago, him and Gary Anderson. But you'd probably fancy Scotland to get through that one, and Portugal or Italy. Portugal, of course, the big name in there is Jose de Sousa, but I think over 2 singles games and a doubles game, if it goes that far, I would fancy Scotland to get through. And to play potentially England in the quarterfinals, I think that might be where their defence ends. And you got to think as well, last year we saw that the tactics come into play as well. A lot was said about John Henderson going up first for Scotland, those games against the Netherlands, and Wales going up against Gerwyn Price and going up against Michael van Gerwen, and Peter Wright going up second. But it's going to be the case for quite a few of these nations, you'd say. If they can get to the second round, win one of those first singles games, take it to a pairs game, then the chances do go up. It is a lot more of a chance for them to get through and maybe cause an upset. So I think we'll see Scotland in the final day, but I think the title defence will probably end in the quarterfinals to England.
Yeah, it's not the form that either player would want to have entering their title defense. But for John Henderson, it wasn't the form he would wanted to have entering the event last year. It really wasn't for Peter Wright either. Peter Wright used it as a springboard to a phenomenal end to the season. I mean, he only won the world title in the Players' Championship final and nearly won the Grand Slam at the back end of the year because of how well he was playing. But he was struggling at times throughout the middle of last year. And for John Henderson, well, he ended up not even making the World Championships. But John Henderson did just have his best run on the floor in quite some time as of today, as of the time of recording, winning 4 matches, 2 last leg deciders. And yes, sure, he got lucky in those 2 last leg deciders. He was given 18 darts in both of them, but he would not have. You need to take your chances to create your own luck, and he did that. And he beat, especially in that last 16, one of the form players in the world in Martin Lukeman. Prior to that, he beat Raymond van Barneveld, who was having a very good day, 6-4. He beat Simon Whitlock, who's been coming back into form, 6-3. So he was getting some scalps. Then he hadn't been able to beat anyone for the longest time. He's nowhere near qualifying for the World Championships as things stand, but he got some results today, and that'll give him some confidence. Peter Wright, on the other hand, went out to Steve Beaton first round, and it's been a lot of that recently. So there's a lot of question marks around both of their forms. How far will they go? It's a tough question. On current form, they probably should not be seeded. The only reason they're seeded, obviously, is because of Peter Wright being the world number 1, and that cancels out the fact that John Henderson is now outside of the top 64 in the world. But they do get, relatively speaking, a kinder draw. Hong Kong has 2 players that we don't know much about. We haven't seen them play in the PDC ever before. Assuming Scotland gets past that, they get either Portugal with Jose de Sousa, who was definitely regressed significantly this year. He's not poor by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not looking like the major champion that he was just a little over a year ago, or the Premier League runner-up that he was a year ago. So that's more of a winnable match than I might have seen, assuming they get past Italy. So Scotland has some of those more favorable draws, but we don't know what to expect. I would love to see John Henderson get back to his best, and the World Cup is where we've seen him get his best success at the very least. Many players had said that they're the nicest person on tour, but that can only really be true about one player. And no offense to the other people it's said about, because many of them are genuinely good people. I'm thinking, at least from when I was able to go and meet them. I don't know all the players who are new tour card holders, but from when I was able to go, you could have said Mark Webster, Johnny Clayton, the late Kyle Anderson. They were all fantastic people, but only one person could be the nicest on tour, and it really is, or was at the very least, John Henderson. But he's just not been there. Peter Wright's struggling. I can't see them repeating this year. I would love to be wrong unless they end up going against the U.S. in the semifinals. But I'm with you. I think quarterfinals is where they'll go out. You said to England, I'm not convinced England's getting past the Czech Republic. I don't care who they go against, though, in the quarterfinals. I think whether it's England, Czech Republic, or Latvia, I think that's the end of the line.
Now move on to our first guest on the show, and he's one of the debutants in the PDC World Cup this week. Here's our chat with Sebastian Bialecki. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by one of the debutants for Poland in the PDC World Cup this weekend, Sebastian Bialecki. Thank you for your time, Sebastian. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you for the invite, and I'm fine. I feel good.
Good, and we're talking only a few days before you make your debut for Poland in the PDC World Cup. How excited are you to be putting on the Poland shirt this week?
That's right. There are a few days left until the PDC World Cup of Darts starts, and I will have the opportunity to perform at this event in Polish shirt. And for this reason, I'm very happy. That was one of my dreams, is to play at the World Cup of Darts.
And the last 18 months or so, you've really announced yourself in the world of darts. But let's go back to the start for you in darts. How old were you when you first discovered darts? How did you get introduced to it?
The first time I discovered darts, I was 8 years old. My dad was playing soft tip league in my town, and I was always curious where he went every week on Sunday. And once I asked Dad that if I could go with him, Dad agreed, and that was my first time with the darts.
From there, what was the next step for you? Did you play a lot at home, or did you go out and play with friends or play in leagues and tournaments?
At the beginning, I only went with my dad to league games or small local tournaments, and I watched my dad playing, and sometimes during breaks in the games or after the tournament, I was trying to throw myself at the board and using a chair to take out the darts.
And I think you were only 13 when you won the Polish Junior Championships for the first time. What are your memories of that win?
Yes, I won my first Junior Polish Championship when I was only 13, and it's one of the memorable victories because I played the final of this tournament against my friend from my town, David Herberg, my good friend.
So from an early age, you're winning titles. When did you start to think darts could be a future career for you, or did you look at it as something to do for fun?
When I started to win titles in my city, I was still thinking about darts, that they are my hobby and passion only, which I do very well. But when I started to win some bigger trophies or played in various finals in national tournaments, and especially after my contract with Target Darts in the Elite One Youth Group started, at that moment I felt that maybe in the future it could be a way of life. And by the way, I want to thank Target Darts for giving me all this great opportunity and help.
And at the start of 2020, we see you enter Q School for the first time just after turning 16 years old. What was that experience like, playing in the PDC setup and at Q School?
When I went to Q School for the first time, I wanted to check how I can play at that moment, and in one tournament I was able to reach the top 32, which was a great success for me. Thanks to this, I gained great experience to see how are this kind of tournament and to play with players who can play at a high level.
You then make your debut on the development tour and reach a semi-final on your first weekend. How much has the development tour helped progress your game?
That's right. My debut in development tour was very successful. For example, because I won the semi-final in one of the tournaments. The development tour helped a lot in my game because I can play with players in my edge at a high level, which can also improve my level and helped me to be more calm during some harder moments in the match. And there are many such moments during such tournaments.
Well, let's get on to last year, 2021, and the start of this rise for you, people taking notice of you. We have to start with the 9-darter at the UK Open. Unfortunately, it was during a time when there was no crowd, but still, what was that moment like, throwing a 9-darter in your first match in a PDC major event?
The UK Open last year was a breakthrough in my career, mainly due to the 9-darter thrown in the first match of my debut at the big PDC tournament. That moment of throwing the 9-darter was more of a shock than a great joy, because at that moment when I was throwing these throws, I didn't feel that I was throwing it, no doubt. My hand was shaking a lot at that moment, but everything what I throw could hit the right fields.
And that weekend, you make it to the fourth round. A month later, you're making your debut on the Pro Tour in the Players' Championship events. How did you find those first experiences of playing on the professional circuit?
The fourth round of the UK Open was a great success and an equal game against top players in the world. A month later, I could go to the Players' Championship. It was a very big surprise because first I managed to make my debut at the big PDC tournament, and suddenly after that another trip to the tournament, this time Players' Championship. I consider the trip itself to be okay, because I managed to win one match and played with top players. But from the game itself, then I wasn't satisfied because I played around 80 average, where at the UK Open I played every match for around 90. But most important was the experience, that is another chance to play with player which I know only from TV.
Then in September last year, you win your first PDC title on the Challenge Tour. And after losing in the first round of the first event that day, the long wait before playing again in the second event, did you think a title was possible that day?
Honestly, after the first tournament, I didn't feel too much that I would do something big in the second tournament. But when we started the tournament and after a lot of training before the tournament, my first match was on average over 90, and I feel that everything is great and the head is working well and the play in the hand is, then I already thought that it could be the tournament where there is even a chance to win. And I wasn't wrong because I managed to win the whole tournament, and the game itself was very equal and exceeded the 90 average in each match. And in one match we managed to play above 100 average.
And what a run to the title that day, winning last leg deciders in the quarterfinals, semi-finals and the final. How did it feel when you take out the 70 and you are a PDC title winner for the first time?
At that point, I just screamed with satisfaction because the road to victory in that tournament was very difficult. In the quarterfinals, I played against Lukas Wenig, and at that moment I was losing 4-2. But I managed to take out 2 legs and we faced in the decider. But the first 9 darts didn't go well for me because there was no scoring. But Lucas missed one match dart on 142 points. And I went to the same number, but I managed to finish. In the semi-final, I was facing DeWitt, and it was more of a game of nervous. Because first I missed a lot of doubles and was losing legs, and at some point it was losing 4-3. I managed to make 4-4, and in the decider Thibault had a few darts to finish the leg, but he missed, and I managed to finish the game with 1 dart on the double. And the final came where I faced Kevin Dodds, and in the match I managed to win the first leg, but then Kevin took advantage of my mistakes and won another 3 leg. Then I made up for 3-3, and then I lost again 4-3, and then I played a fantastic leg at 4-4, and for the third time in a row I played the deciding leg where Kevin didn't use 1 dart on the double, and then I weighed to those magic 70 points and finish it with a victory. For me, a great tournament, and it shows that you always have to play to the end because you don't know what your fate will bring during the match.
Definitely, and you also win a development tour title before the end of the year, then heading into Q School this year. How were you feeling about your chances of winning a tour card?
Winning the development tour made me very optimistic in front of Q School due to the even and very high level which I have played, and honestly this year I was hoping to get a card, but a bit unlucky draw and missed the equal good game I had before Q School.
Well, despite missing out, you once again get an invite to the UK Open via your performances on the other PDC tours, and you certainly impressed this time at Minehead. Before we get into your results, that was your first major with fans watching as well. Did that take some getting used to playing in front of the crowds?
The invitation to the UK Open made me happy again that I will be able to playing in the big PDC tournament again. But looking at the game itself, it was more equal, and I think it was much better than the year before. And my goals was changing for such a tournament, not forgetting that this will be my first big PDC tournament with fans who contribute a lot to the game, and it took a bit of getting used to playing in front of the crowd. You can even look at the first match and on the second stage where I faced Matt Campbell, where my game was very nervous and unequal. But in the game against Ryan Searle, I played again a good, even match on an average of 90. So this familiarization with the crowd is needed in such tournaments.
Yeah, and a fantastic run that weekend, making the quarterfinals, beating top 32 players like Ryan Searle and Ian White on the way. How are you feeling going into the Sunday playing on the main stage?
Yes, the quarterfinal in the UK Open was an amazing achievement, and I have managed to beat the world's top players such as Ian White and Ryan Searle. At the time entering the stage, I felt this belief that I was going on stage where I have always dreamed to perform in such great tournament like UK Open. And then I thought it happened a few months ago. I was playing in the Youth World Championships next to the hall. And after the tournament, I went to the audience to watch the Players' Championship finals at the same venue. And suddenly, 4 months later, I take the stage as a quarterfinalist at the UK Open. It was a great moment.
And you almost made the last session, missing double 15 for that 150 finish in the decider against Willie O'Connor. When the dart left your hand, did you think it was in? And how much confidence did you take from that weekend?
I will remember double 15 for a long time, but at the time of the throw-in, I was sure that it will come in, but fate wanted it differently, and it didn't fall where it should be, and William was happy with the victory in this match. After this tournament, I gained a lot of confidence and knew that I could play on high level with everyone.
Definitely, yeah. And this great run continues with you winning the Denmark Open over in the WDF circuit, a win which secures you a spot in their World Championship next year. Do you plan on playing any other WDF events this year?
Winning the Denmark Open was a bit of a surprise for me, but I also knew that day I felt strong in the game itself, and also this experience from, for example, UK Open, where I played in front of the audience on stage. It helped me to be more calm while playing on stage in Denmark. As for other WDF events this year, I do not plan for other WDF events, but never know.
Well, we've also seen you make your debut on the PDC European Tour recently. What was that like playing on those stages in front of the big crowds?
The trip to the first PDC European Tour was a great experience, another possibility to play on the stage in front of a huge crowd, which expanded my experience from previous tournaments.
And then last weekend, you won your third PDC title, winning another development tour title out in Germany, beating Keane Barry in the final. We've still got 2 more weekends to go, but what are your goals for the rest of the development tour season?
The last weekend of the development was very successful. I was satisfied with the last 16 in 3 tournaments. 1 tournament lost in the first game, but the next tournament won in great style. When it comes to the next development tour tournaments, my goal is to play evenly and reach the first stages in each tournament. And after winning the development tour, I believed that I could even fight for the PDC Tour card this year.
Well, let's get on to the World Cup. And as the second highest ranked Polish player, you'll partner up with Krzysztof Ratajski for Poland. Was it after the UK Open you started to think you might get the spot with Krzysztof, and what does it mean to be playing for Poland in this event?
Honestly, after maybe a month after the end of the UK Open, I started to think that I had a chance to play at the World Cup of Darts in the Polish national team. It was my dream to play at this tournament one day, and now you can say that my dream has come true and I play for Poland. It's an honor to represent your country and at the World Cup.
And you're still only 18 years old, still in education. How do you juggle the two, darts and education, playing darts, entering as many tournaments as you can while also studying?
At the moment, I go to the technical secondary school and finish the 3rd grade. And now it's still okay to learning and playing in a large number of tournaments. At school, I have good grades, so there are no problems with learning. The tutor and several teachers know about my trips, so everything is all right.
That's good to hear. Well, we should also mention the support you have behind you, being managed by Modus and also being with Target, the darts manufacturer. How much of a help have they been for you so far?
So Target Darts supports me with accessories for playing darts, which looking at the expense during the year are huge, and my management group Modus, thanks to which it charges me a large part of expenses for all competitions, and I'm really thankful for the help and trust in me. I wouldn't be able to be here where I am, and I would like to thank them very much for what they are doing in my development.
And lastly, a long career ahead of you in this game, but what are your goals for the next 2 or 3 years? Are you determined to get a tour card very soon, or are you happy progressing like you are now, gaining all of these experiences from the different events?
Goals for the next 2-3 years are definitely to get a PDC tour card, to perform at the PDC in El Pari World Championship, and to appear more often at the European Tour and other PDC tournaments. And if possible, I would like to thank all my sponsors: Modus Darts, Target Darts, Only Darts, Expo Bigala, Red Lips Design, DM Larry Design for their support and trust. I would also like to thank all those who support me and write nice words. My manager Maciek Horbinski, without all this would not be possible, but above all my family for the support, help they put in my development and comfort in difficult moments.
Well, Sebastian, thanks very much for doing this. We appreciate your time and we wish you all the best for the World Cup this week and all the other events that you'll be playing in this year.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Thanks again to Sebastian for joining us. Now let's have a look at the draw for the World Cup and which first round ties we're most looking forward to on Thursday and Friday.
Well, to some extent, I hinted at this in the last couple questions, and we talked a little bit about it off air. I said that there were 4 unseeded teams that if I were in a seeded team, I would prefer not to draw. And 2 of them are the ones that the top seeds drew. England drew Czech Republic, and Wales drew Philippines. And I talked a bit about Philippines. I mentioned Czech Republic, but it should be stated just how much the Czech team has improved. Adam Gavlas, as of the day we're recording it, just moved into the Pro Tour seeds for the first time. Granted, not all the top players made the trip over to Germany for the Players' Championship events, but that just means that he's only a few players out of the seeds to begin with. He keeps getting better. We know he's going to be a star one day, but he's not that far off from it right now. That's why he's just outside the top 32 in the Pro Tour to merit. Karol Sedlacek, sure, he's not on tour, but he's qualified for nigh on every Euro Tour event this year, and he's made a very good showing of himself. The pairs format is more of an equalizer than anything else, but I don't think they really need an equalizer. It'll help. But Adam Gavlas and Karol Sedlacek both have the games individually to beat Michael Smith and James Wade individually. I wouldn't expect them to, especially with how brilliant Michael Smith has been right now. But they could, especially over a shorter format. Pairs just makes it that little bit easier to get the job done. I think that is an amazingly interesting first-round tie. And even if Czech Republic pull that upset, that doesn't mean that it's near the end of the line for them. They could go very far in this tournament. Therefore, I'm looking forward to it. Wales, Philippines, I already talked about, but I'll mention then the other two because I said there were 4 unseeded teams I would not want to draw. Maybe, I guess you could say 5. I think Poland also, but I didn't want to give them any credit since they're playing the United States. The other 2 that I would not want to have drawn were Canada and Ireland. And okay, they didn't draw seeds. Instead, they drew one another. So that's going to be a tie that I want to see. Jeff Smith's regressed a little bit this year, and he's been inconsistent this year. But Matt Campbell has just continues to get better. We still haven't seen the best of him on the Pro Tour, but he's made a name for himself already. Jeff Smith will rebound to his best at some point, especially with all the troubles he's had over the last couple of years having to travel. Probably has the worst luck of among the worst luck of any players when it comes to international travel. But they go against an Irish team, which also has regressed a little bit this year. Steve Lennon is struggling to qualify for the World Championships. Willie O'Connor was looking like he was a top 32 player, but he's taken a step back. But the World Cup always brings the best out of Ireland year in, year out. They're not usually seeded. So I was about to say they outperform their seed, but they're not seeded, but they might as well be because you expect them to give their best and make the quarterfinals and therefore be as if they were seeded, if not go further. That is a tie that is very juicy. And whoever wins that, no offense to Brazil, will have every chance to beat the Dutch team in the second round and therefore get to the quarterfinals. So those are, I think, the 3 first-round ties that I'll say. I'll leave the rest for you. There's a few other good ones, but being that those have 4 of the 5 teams I wouldn't want to have drawn, I had to go with them.
Can't really argue with that. And when this draw for the World Cup comes out every year, I think a lot of people look at straight away who the seeds are going to play, who the 8 seeds have got in the first round, because in the past we have had banana skins. We have had some shocks over the years. I mean, the biggest ones, the most notable ones, England losing their first game in the very first World Cup to Spain, 2010, James Wade and Phil Taylor. More recently, I mentioned it earlier, Scotland losing to the Singapore team 2017, and that Singapore team again doing some damage in the first round, beating Wales, I think 3 years ago, 2019. So that's where I'd look to begin with. And yeah, I can't really argue with that. At the top of the draw, England against the Czech Republic. And despite the record that the Czech Republic have in this World Cup, played 7, lost 7, it's such a surprise that they've not won a game in this competition yet. And even last year, they went up against Poland and averaged 103.47, and that still wasn't enough to win the game. It got them 2 legs. They lost to Poland in the first round, the highest losing average we've seen in a first round match in the World Cup. If they bring that average this week again, or maybe even up it, they've got to be in with a chance again, haven't they? Because, as you say, Adam Gavlas and Karel Sedlacek are 2 very good players, and we've seen quite a bit of them actually on the stage this year on the European tour. So I think despite getting drawn against the top seeds, they will fancy their chances of causing an upset. And you've got to remember as well, this is a New England team for this year, like it was last year. We've got a new lineup this year with Michael Smith partnering up with James Wade, and Michael Smith in such good form at the moment. Just won another title on the Tuesday, another Players' Championship event. James Wade, okay, he's been a little bit indifferent the last few weeks with his health scare, of course, but you know, we've seen how well he can play this year as well in the Premier League with that big average that he had, his record average on TV. So we know those are going to be a formidable team, the English team. And I think going up against the Czech Republic, that for me is the tie of the first round. And after that, you mentioned the Ireland-Canada game. That's a game that jumped off the page for me as well. You've got the runners-up 2019 Ireland, Steve Lennon, Willie O'Connor, not won a game in the World Cup since then. They've gone out in the first round the last couple of years, and probably going to be looking over their shoulder, you've got to say as well, because you've got a young Irishman, Keane Barry, just made a semi-final today when we're talking. You expect to be in that Irish team next year. So this could be the last time these two partner each other for a little while if Keane carries on the way he's going. So Ireland-Canada, that's definitely a game I'm looking forward to. And I will give a mention to your boys, the United States. You've got Danny Baggish and Jules Van Dongen both making their debuts. Danny Baggish, of course, was due to make his debut last year, but travel restrictions kept him out. And this was one of the events that when he got that tour card at the start of last year, he was so excited to play in the World Cup and represent his country, and he's going to get a chance to do that with another tour card holder in Jules van Dongen. And they're going up against a team which could be a dark horse this week in Poland. Krzysztof Ratajski, we've just seen him have a good run today, and Sebastian Bialecki, who the last 15 months or so has really started to make a name for himself. Still only 18 years of age, but he's achieved a lot in the last 15 months. And the 9-darter at the UK Open, winning titles, quarterfinals of the UK Open. And you've got to think as well, to get into this World Cup, he hasn't got a tour card, but he's higher up in the order of merit than two Polish players that do have their tour card, Krzysztof Kachuk and Radek Sagansky. He is above both of them, and he's got his place in the World Cup, so every credit to him. And I think that is a tasty tie in the first round as well.
Now we'll move on to our second of 4 guests on this week's show, and it's with the Spanish World Cup star, Tony Martinez.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by one of the debutantes in this year's PDC World Cup of Darts, Tony Martinez. Thanks for the time, Tony. How you doing?
Good.
And there's only one place to start, and that is with the World Cup. You're going to be partnering up with Jose Justicia for Team Spain in Frankfurt next week. How excited are you to represent Spain in the World Cup?
It's strange because I live in Belgium and I play for Spain.
We'll definitely come back to that in a moment and the World Cup, but let's get back to the start for you in darts. How old were you when you first discovered darts? How did you get introduced to the game?
I was, I think, 16 or 17, but the girlfriend I had in that time had a pup, the father. And so I learned to play darts. As I think 34 years or something like that.
Have you always played darts since then?
No, maybe I played 20 years and then I stopped 3 years maybe and then I play again. And in 2017 I had an operation on my hand and then I stopped 3 years. I could not play.
We touched on you were born in Spain, but you live in Belgium. How long have you lived in Belgium and what was behind moving there?
All my life I live in Belgium.
And I was looking back through your record, you did play in some PDC events as early as 2002, the Antwerp Open. What are your memories of that time?
I don't remember that.
Well, one of your first big titles was the Belgium Gold Cup 2003, and there's a lot of big names in Belgian darts on that trophy. What did it mean to win a title like that?
It's very nice. In Belgium I won many titles. I know everyone because when Kim Heubrechts or Dimi, I know him from children. I think when I play for the WDF in the national team from Belgium, because I played 14 years for Belgium national team, I was with Kim, who was in junior, I bring him to London to play darts.
After that, we see you playing locally across Europe in other opens as well. What was darts for you back then? Was it still just a hobby to go alongside work?
I see that as hobby. Now too, I see that as hobby. I don't gonna make a career. I am told. For me, it's a nice game, a hobby, but it's nice. I like that because I play 34 or 35 years. For me, it's an hobby.
Well, we've also seen you make the trip a few times back during that time to England for the World Masters. I think your best run was to the last 40. What was it like to play in the World Masters?
Nice. Strange, because in that time we go with the ship and we always go 12 hours in the ship sleeping, and then we come in the morning there, and maybe sometimes we have to run to get to the place to we have to play. That was always strange.
Fast forward a few years, 2017, we see you make your European Tour debut in the PDC, and you beat Dimi 6-5 in the final of that qualifier, who we've just seen win on the World Series. What was that moment like when you won that, decided to qualify?
That was strange, because that was the first time I played a tournament in the Netherlands. I think in Maastricht I have to qualify me, and then I have to go to Mannheim in Germany to play to him. I don't remember the name. And after I played to Duke Cullen, I think. After that, I had an accident on my finger, and then I had an operation. And then I don't have to play that 3 years.
Yeah, I want to come on to that in a second, but the European tour, what was that experience like to play on that for the first time?
Brilliant. There was everything was big for me. Big stage, many people. Was nice.
And I was going to ask you, there's a bit of a break after that, but you explained it there. You had an operation on your finger. What happened there?
Yes, I cannot throw because I'm right-handing, and it was on my finger and right hand. Then came Corona after that, and I practice. And after the Corona, I go to the Q school. So
during that time when everyone was stuck at home with all the lockdowns, I'm assuming you had a dartboard set up at home and you filled that spare time practicing?
Yes, 2 years practice.
And then at the start of this year, you mentioned it, you went to Q school. What persuaded you to give Q school a go? Was it just having all that practice at home and thinking you wanted to give it a go?
Yes, a half year before I played tournaments here in Belgium. I think I won 12 on a road. Two yellow class, two big names. Yellow class, Germain Watanea, to many people, like that. And everybody say, you have to go to the Q school, maybe you get a tour card. And I did, and I won. It was strange.
So it sounds like you went into Q school with some good form, some good results behind you. People were talking you up. Yeah. But for yourself, did you think a tour card was possible?
When I was there, yes, because I many people I know from the doors, and I was not worse than the other people, dus I have a chance.
And you made a good start as well at Q school in that first stage. You came through with a day to spare. How helpful was it to have that day off between the first and the second stages?
The first day was good. I missed the bull, I think, for to win. But the second day was a bad day. I remember that.
Yeah, the final stage, you make the last 16 on the first day to get some points on the board, and then you go out early in the second and third days. How were you feeling going into that final day?
I say to many people today, I'm going to get my tour card. And then nobody believes it, but I get it.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah, you make the final on the last day, but by then your tour card had already been secured on points. As you're getting all them wins, what was the moment like when you found out that you had done enough and you had got your tour card?
I was glad. I remember I played to Jimi Hendrix. I think if I won, I had the tour card. And I say, today I'm going to get it. And I won. I was glad, very glad. I called my girlfriend and I said, I have my tour card. And she don't believe it.
Yeah, what was that reaction like when you got back home and you saw your partner and you saw your friends and family? It must have been a big celebration.
Yes, it was happy for me, the people.
And I think there was only 3 weeks between Q School and that first Players' Championship. As someone that is new to the tour, how much time went into then planning out your year, mapping out your year with all the events? I can imagine that took some organising.
Yes, it was strange because I have to have a deal with my job. I work normally 40 hours a week, dus I have to talk to my boss. And I'm looking for a manager. I was looking for a manager too.
And so starting off then with the work, how much of a help have they been then with this new journey that you're on the tour? Have they been quite understanding?
Yes. I have a good boss. He understands everything. And he said you can get so many vacation if you want. And I was glad to hear that.
Good to hear. And as far as the manager side of things, did you manage to sort out a manager?
Yes. He came to me. He said that in Niederhausen, he said, Tony, if you want a manager, you call me. He said, first I'm going to talk to another manager. There were 2 or 3 managers do you want to talk to me, but I have to talk to him for a good deal.
Mm-hmm. And who is your manager?
Master Darts, Frank van Rijn from the Netherlands.
How much of a help has he been then in these early months as you're getting used to playing on the tour?
Yes, hoe zeg ik dat regelen? He arranged everything for me.
For you then, walking into that room for that first Players' Championship event, I know there would have been a lot of people that you would have known, but being part of those tournaments, did that take some getting used to?
No, it was not new because many people I know, like Van Gerwen, I know him like a child, Van Barneveld, I know him, Darryl Webster was there, many people I know from before, many years before, and before PDC too, from VDF.
And I was looking at your results so far. Although you've not had a deep run yet, you've picked up quite a few scalps and wins over some big names. Johnny Clayton, Raymond van Barneveld, who you mentioned, Jose de Souza, Kim Huybrechts. How?
It's strange. The big ones I take, and the little ones I lose. I don't understand that too. I don't know why.
So what do you think's been the biggest thing that you've learnt so far in these events so far from your game?
The nerves under control. If I can do that, I can play better.
Well, let's get back to the World Cup, and I know that you've represented Spain before in some of the WDF events, so was it always a simple decision to say I'm going to play for Spain in the World Cup in the PDC as well?
Yes, it was simple because the PDC asked your nationality, and I'm Spanish nationality, 100% are Spanish. Dus I cannot play for Belgium. In the VDF I can play, but not in the PDC.
And the draws come out, you've got the home nation, Germany, in the first round. What was your reaction when you saw the draw?
Germany have a good team, but I'm not scared.
Well, the event is also unique in the PDC with there being the pairs. Is the pairs something that you've played a lot of back home or not?
Yes. I have, I think, 5-time Belgium champion pairs with 4 different people.
Wow.
So I can play pairs. It's not the same like single pairs. It's another game.
Looking at how your week's going to play out next week, obviously you've got the 2 Players' Championship events first in Germany. Do you think that's going to help, having those 2 events, to get a bit of match practice in ahead of playing in the World Cup?
Yes, I think I can practice with Jose Justicia Tuesday and Wednesday evening. I can play with him, practice.
Excellent. And looking further ahead, you've got this tour card for at least this year and next year. What are the main goals for you? What would you like to get out of these next 2 years?
I hope 64.
Mm-hmm. And is there any events you'd like to get to? Of course, I'm assuming that the World Championship, that would be a big dream to maybe play at Ali Pali one day?
Maybe. I hope that, but I cannot say it can be or not. I think I'm a little bit too old for that, maybe.
No, I wouldn't write your chances off just yet. Did you?
Maybe I can play with the seniors.
Is that something you've got your eye on then? If one day you don't have this tour card, playing in the senior events as well?
Yes, maybe. I don't know. I know Phil Taylor too.
Would you like to maybe play Phil one day on that big stage?
Yes, when I'm 60 or something like that, and then he's 70 or something.
And lastly, before we let you go, I mean, you say you're old, but in darts, you're still a lot of years left. Did you ever think you'd get to this point where you were playing on that professional PDC circuit?
No, I don't think I was dreaming now from the PDC. It's because the people say you are good enough to play that. I have did it. Normally, I don't. It was not a dream to go to the PDC, but now I see that I'm good enough to play there.
Yeah, we can definitely see that. Well, congratulations again on getting your tour card at Q School, and we wish you all the best for the World Cup next week and for the rest of the year as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks to Tony for joining us this week. Now we'll move on one more question about the World Cup, and it is the most important one because it gets us to mention the greatest trophy in World Darts, the Costampe Trophy. Who makes it to the final and who wins this most prestigious of trophies?
It's just a shame that we're not going to see, well, to my knowledge, we're not going to see Costampe there on Sunday presenting the trophy. That would have been a nice touch. But yeah, prediction time, and this is the time when we jinx all the players. I think we predicted our Premier League winners and ended up being the other two that made the final and contested the final. So our picks were out of the running going into the final on Monday night. So hopefully between us we'll do a little bit better in the picks here. And I'll start with the top of the draw if you like. And I mentioned it earlier. I think England will get the better of Scotland in that top quarter-final. So I've got England making the semi-finals, and I think they'll play Australia in the semi-finals. So I think we could have one of the ties of the weekend being Australia against Belgium. And the top half of the draw, I've got Australia coming through. I think Damien Heta and Simon Whitlock are going to get the better of James Wade and Michael Smith. Bottom half of the draw, I'll go a bit more conventional for that third quarter of the draw. I think it will be Wales. I mentioned them earlier. I think they're going to be tough to beat this week. But I'm going to go for an outsider to make the semi-finals. And they're going to get past the Netherlands in the second round. They're then going to get past Northern Ireland in the quarterfinals. And that's going to be Canada. I think they're going to be the surprise package this week and make it all the way to the semi-finals. But I think Wales will be too strong. So that's my final lineup, Australia against Wales. And the last couple of years, we've seen Australia lose to Wales in the quarterfinals. And I think this time round, even though it's a little bit further in the competition, it is going to be Wales that put an end to Australia's bid to be World Cup champions for the first time. I think it's going to be 3-1 to Wales in the final, and they are going to become two-time champions of the Coke Stompy Trophy.
Well, I'm going to do something we haven't done before, and I'm going to ask you to make a second prediction. I want to predict what I'm going to predict as the final and champion, and then I might right after you do that.
Right, so top half has got to be the United States. No, okay, right, serious pick. I reckon you'll go with Belgium in the top half. Bottom half, I reckon you might go for another outsider again. Let's go with Germany. Belgium-Germany final.
That's interesting. I was really curious what you're going to think. I do like this Belgian team, and I'm assuming both get through to the quarterfinals. I'm really looking forward to a Belgium-Australia quarterfinal. Obviously, there's a lot of history, and not necessarily between all four of the current Belgian and Australian players, but at least some of them, Kim Huybrechts and Simon Whitlock, having met on the World Cup stage before in some classic matches. So I'm looking forward to that. But despite everything I said earlier, I'm actually going to form. I think England will beat Czech Republic. I think Wales will beat Philippines. And I think they'll beat everyone along the route. And I think it'll be England against Wales in the final. And I think this is the time that Michael Smith is going to win his first of at least two majors this year, if this counts. If it doesn't count, then his 0th of at least two, because he's going to win two this year. But he'll win the World Cup. So I'm going England to deliver Michael Smith and James Wade the World Cup title over Wales in the final.
Darts is coming home, and yes, this is definitely a major title. Well, let's get into our final guests on the show, and here's our chat with the Gibraltar team for this year's World Cup. Here's our chat with Craig Galliano and Justin Hewitt. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the Gibraltar team for this year's PDC World Cup of Darts, Justin Hewitt and Craig Galliano. Thanks for the time, gents. How you doing?
Yeah, thank you, Alex, for having me today. Yeah, not too bad. Looking forward to this year's World Cup, like 2 years ago when we spoke last time. So yeah, we're just looking forward to this Thursday to get back on that stage.
Yeah, I agree, Craig. We're just really looking forward to go back to that stage because we went the first year and there was also no crowd. So just knowing there's going to be a big crowd this year due to big nations as well playing in the same day as us, it's going to be a really fun experience for us.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. Firstly, with you, Craig, your debut in the World Cup was in 2020 when there were no fans in the venue because of the pandemic. How excited are you to be back in the team this year and playing in front of that crowd for the first time?
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like I spoke recently with someone else. Obviously, I love the darts and I've been to the Ali Pali many times and I know what it is to experience it from as a crowd. I was watching it from the crowd, but actually being on that stage and I'm going to experience it on the stage on Thursday is going to be something else, and I'm really looking forward to the experience.
And Justin, you and Craig both made your debuts for Gibraltar in 2020 together. What was that experience like for you playing in your first PDC World Cup?
The first time we went up on that stage, it was incredible. For me, it was a dream come true. Basically, since I was a young child, my dream's been to play in the stage. And the second year, when there was even a crowd, it was even better. I just loved the experience, and it's something I'm always going to have with me.
Yeah, Justin, this is your third consecutive year playing in the World Cup. Last year, you ran Singapore very close, just losing out 5-4. Was that a tough defeat to take, coming so close to that win, or did you look to gain experience more than anything from that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. In the moment, we were so angry because we were so close and we were ahead by so much, and we let it out of our hands, basically. But after that, we've gained a lot of experience since, and it was a good lesson to us as well.
And Craig, we had you on our show just before that World Cup debut for you in 2020. You and Justin also losing a close one to Lithuania. What are your memories of that game?
Yeah, like Justin was saying, it was obviously my first, both of us first time in the World Cup, and obviously it finished 5-3. It was quite close. It was 3-3 at one point, and we missed 2 dots to take it to 4-4. But yeah, nonetheless, it was a great experience, and I learned my lesson from that. Justin would have learned his lesson from the last 2. So let's see what we can bring out on Thursday in Frankfurt.
Definitely. And Justin, this is the first time that we've had you on our show, so we've got to go back to the start. How old were you when you first discovered darts? How did you get introduced to the game?
It wasn't long ago. I think I've been playing now for 5 years. So I must have been 14, 15. And basically the Youth Darts Academy was run where I live. So every time I would walk home or walk to school or whatever, I would walk past the academy and I would always look up, look inside, but I'd never walk in. And one day the youth manager, basically Alex Nunez, he was standing outside, and as he'd always see me pass, he stopped me one day, and just from that day he got me on to playing darts, and I haven't stopped since. And
a couple of years later for you, we started to see your name a lot more, starting with the development tour. How did you find that first taste of playing against the world's best youth players?
It was definitely something different, but it was also something I was prepared for, and something I've gained a lot of experience in, and I've enjoyed this past few years in the development tours. It's been an amazing experience, everything basically. All the abroad darts that I can go and play is more experience for me, so I gain lots of things by going out and playing.
And before that first World Cup for you in 2020, we had seen you on the big stage before you made your European Tour debut in your home country of Gibraltar. What was that experience like?
That was incredible as well. The walk-on I got as well. It was something I had never experienced before, and I've experienced it 2 times now, and I love it. I love it just as much as the World Cup. Just being up in the stage with the crowd is amazing for me.
And we have to mention your run in the JDC World Championships that year as well. A great run, getting to the semi-finals, just losing out a close one to Adam Gavlas. What are your memories of that run?
Oh, that was an incredible day for me. The JDC was a really good tournament as well, and I was playing really well. And the funny thing about that was straight after I lost in the semi-finals, I had only 10 minutes to get down to the other venue to play for the European qualifier. And I got down in, I think it was 6 minutes, and I just managed to register, and I ended up qualifying.
Good times. Well, Craig, back to you, and since we last spoke, 2021, you had back-to-back quarterfinals on the development tour. How much confidence did those runs give you?
Yeah, a lot. I was in, like you said, last year in Milton Keynes. I went back-to-back in, I think it was Event 6 and Event 7, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I was playing good stuff, and I had 2 good runs in the same day, which gave me a lot of confidence. Also, a few weeks ago, I also got to the semi-final in Development Tour, so it's been going well. Every time I've gone to the Development Tour, I've been learning from, obviously, playing against some big players and learning from the experience. As many people know, it's a long day in Development Tours, so it's good experience to play against good players and also know how to play the game and how to manage actual day.
And Craig, let's get on to this year, and we've seen you go even further on the development tour, getting to a semi-final, looking at that run, beating the likes of Nathan Rafferty, John Brown on the way. What did that run mean to you?
Yeah, to be honest, it was an incredible day. I was so proud of myself. So that weekend, I didn't think I played that badly. I just had some tough draws on the Friday and the Saturday, and on the Sunday, I just I don't know, I just started playing really well and started being these players which are on tour, and like it's something I want to do when I'm like eventually. So it was a proud day for me. I didn't manage to win the tournament, but semi-final on the last day, I take it.
Justin, yourself as well, we've seen you start to make your mark on the development tour. You had a quarter-final for the first time last year. You've had another quarter-final this year. How much has playing on the development tour helped improve your game?
The development tour has been a huge part of my game, and a huge part of the reason why I've developed to the player I am now. The experience and the game practice you get there, honestly, I don't think you'll find it anywhere else as a youth.
And we know you two are best friends from a young age. So, Craig, who is the best darts player, you or Justin?
Who do you think?
I've got to stay neutral.
Me as well. I can't. Like I say, Justin's been probably one of my best mates in darts, and obviously we started the first school together. So now it's going to be the second time we're going to represent Gibraltar on the biggest stage, which is the World Cup of darts, and I'm so proud of us both, and I can't wait for Thursday.
Well, we'll see if Justin gives a similar answer here. Justin, who is the better footballer, you or Craig?
There's no doubt, Craig. No doubt.
Yeah, Craig, the last time we spoke, obviously we spoke about you playing darts and football at the same time, playing football in the Gibraltar National League, playing youth football for Gibraltar. Are you still playing football?
Yeah, I'm playing. I've been playing a bit of football now. Obviously, the season's over, and I've just started a new job, so I've left it a bit to the side. But yeah, I've been speaking. Obviously, I want to take my darts more seriously now. Hopefully, take it to the next step. So I might have to consider next year. Obviously, just playing just to keep fit and that. But obviously, making darts my actual sport for the next few years, hopefully.
And from your Twitter, we can see, Craig, that you're a Spurs fan, so you must have been pleased that Spurs got in the top 4. How do you think they can do next season?
With Antonio, you never know. But hopefully it will be a great season, and yeah, I can't wait to go down to the lane and watch Champions League nights on the Wednesday and Tuesday nights. It's going to be unbelievable. And
Justin, are you a Spurs fan as well? Do you follow any teams or any sports?
I follow La Liga. Well, Barcelona's been my team since I was little, so I follow them.
Very nice. So we'll finish up back to the World Cup, and as we've seen for the last few years, to get into those 2 spots, you've had the 6 qualifiers in Gibraltar. Justin, you won 4 out of the 6 events to finish top of the list. How pleased were you with the performances in the qualifiers this year?
This year I've been extremely pleased with the way I've played in the World Cup qualifiers. I haven't had easy draws. I've had tough draws. I've played every single player, but I've managed to prove myself and to prove to others as well that when I play my game, I can be at the top.
Craig, it was a lot closer for you. I think just 2 points you finished ahead of Dyson Parody to finish second. You won the last event. How proud are you of that run at the end to get that second spot?
Yeah, like you say, this is the second time I've qualified in the last event, so it's I'm proud of myself. Obviously, getting through, which is a tough qualifiers. Play 6 qualifiers, and obviously competing against Justin, Dyson, and some other players. It's tough at the end of the day. But yeah, getting past through the last day, knowing all the pressure is on you. It's either you win or you don't go, and I've done it twice now, so I'm really pleased with myself.
And looking at the draw, Justin, you're up against Northern Ireland, Darrell Gurney, Brendan Dolan, 2 top 32 players in the PDC in that first round. How tough is that going to be, or how do you feel about your chances?
Honestly, I feel that if me and Craig do play our game and we do play relaxed, we will give them a good run, and I will guarantee you it won't be a whitewash. But apart from that, they are 2 really good players, so we do need to take our game onto that stage, and hopefully we can get a couple of legs or even better win the match.
And lastly, Craig, we've seen that the last few years Gibraltar have come close to getting another win in the World Cup. What would it mean for you to maybe possibly being the youngest ever team to win a game in the World Cup, to get that first win for Gibraltar since 2015?
That would be a dream, to be honest. I always think about it if that day ever happens, we actually win a game in the World Cup. I don't know how the emotions, the feelings would be. I don't know. I get goosebumps from actually speaking about it. So hopefully we can put everything right and this Thursday, and I just hope we really get the win this Thursday. We'll try our best. Obviously, we know we're facing a great side, which is Northern Ireland, but we'll try our best. And if it does happen, we'll see how the emotions are after that game.
Well, Justin, Craig, it's a pleasure to chat to the both of you. Wish you all the best for this weekend in the World Cup and what else is to come for 2022 as well.
Thanks for your time, Alex. Cheers.
Thanks for your time, mate. Nice talking.
Thanks again to Craig and Justin for joining us, and we'll finish the show away from the PDC over to the WDF. And at the weekend we had the Dutch Open, the biggest open in world darts, and Jelle Klaassen winning the men's title, securing his spot at Lakeside in the WDF World Championship next year, winning the Dutch Open for the first time. How impressed have you been with Jelle this year without his tour card?
Very much so. And we're going to try to get Jelle on in the coming weeks. We obviously didn't want to get him on for the World Cup show, and couldn't because he's also competing at the Players' Championship events right now. It's a very busy week for him as he got called up for those. But we would like to get Jelle on now that he's won the Dutch Open and qualified for Lakeside. But I've been really impressed, and it's, we don't know what to expect from a player when they drop off the tour. It can go, well, a few different ways, but I'll summarize the two main ways it might go. One is they just needed that break from the PDC to get their confidence back, to get everything back together, and they start to get results, start to get that confidence back, and we see them rebound and become the same or better player. It's not always that they get back to where they were. Some players get better from having dropped off the tour. Jeffrey Deswan, Nathan Aspinall. Granted, they're younger players, but those are two good examples. There are others who have lost their tour card, gone and played other events, and come back so much better. The other thing that could happen is it could just keep falling down, and we never really see them again. And that list is much, much longer. And even looking at like former Premier League players, since Jelle falls into that cap of former Premier League players, Wes Newton is a good example. Andy Hamilton did come back and get back on tour, but he was never the same player he was before. And there are a few others as well. Jelle seems to be one of those players, though, that has benefited from having lost his tour card. He's won through a couple of the Euro Tour qualifiers. He's done not great in the Challenge Tour events so far, but he's put in a decent performance. And then obviously at the Dutch Open, yes, these are shorter matches, but that just adds the pressure. And the big thing that had hurt Jelle over the last year or two on the PDC Tour was losing last leg deciders and missing key doubles, whether in the last leg or in the 10th leg when he had a chance to win. And in a shorter format, that will only hurt you more. He didn't do that. Okay, he did miss 3 in hand in the penultimate leg of the final, but he was so far clear and playing so well that it didn't bother him. But he's been able to remember what it's like to cross the finish line and no longer to be afraid of crossing that finish line. And I've been really impressed with how quickly he has found his game again. There's still a long way for him to go to reach the player he was. At his best, he was a player that, well, he was a world champion in the BDO. He was a multiple title winner in the PDC, a world championship semifinalist in the PDC, a Premier League player. He's not currently that player, and the scoring power is not currently at what it was at his best. But he's on the way back to it. And how quickly he's been able to find his game, especially when there's that long list of players who went from so high to losing their tour card that never got their game back. I've been very impressed with.
It was like I put on Twitter just after Jelle won the title on Sunday. You've got to give him credit, and it's a great point that you make there about players that, even high profile players, when they lose their tour card at the end of the year, go to Q School, don't win it back. Some of them, they play on the Challenge Tour, they play WDF events, BDO events as it was back in the day, and they don't reach those heights again, or don't get back on the PDC Tour. And yeah, there's still a long way to go, isn't there, for Jelle Klaassen? He wants to get back on the PDC Tour, playing on that professional circuit week in, week out, and get into the major events, get into the World Championship, the World Match Play, maybe even get in the Premier League again, who knows. But it's the first steps are always the hardest, aren't they? And we've both spoke to Jelle this year. You spoke to him just before Q School when he said he was confident of getting his tour card back, and I spoke to him a few weeks later at the UK Open backstage in Minehead. He had his Riley's polo shirt on. He won one of the Riley's qualifiers to get to the UK Open and won through 3 rounds in that afternoon session on the Friday. 3 different boards to get through that one. And I was in the multi-board room watching his game against Cameron Menzies, the 104 average, 6 out of 6 on the doubles. And I think he had something like 3 ton plus checkouts, 5 180s, all his legs won in 15 darts or less. It was vintage yellow class, and if you like, and even in the fourth round, the Friday evening, lost out to Devon Peterson, but again performed well. And recently we've seen him play on the European Tour and the Dutch Open this weekend. It's such a hard tournament to win with so many players. It's an event that if you're a darts player of any ability, you want to at least go to once to experience it. But we don't know too much about how the games went aside from the results, but he dropped 2 legs in his first 7 matches, which takes him doing, and beat Thibaut Tricol in the semi-finals, beat Mark Burley 3-0 in the final. And he'll say that there's more to come, and I think we'll both agree that there is more to come from Jelle Klaasen. But to do what he's done already this year, the success that he's had to get a spot back at the World Championship, back at Lakeside, of course, that's where it all really began for him at the age of 21. He's now 37. It might make some of our listeners feel a little bit old that are a similar age to me, but he was the youngest winner of the Lakeside. He's now going back to the Lakeside next year to see if he can maybe add another world title to his resume. But yeah, I think when you think back to Q School, and he said it to me that I said what went wrong, and he said everything. He used 10 different sets of darts at Q School. The first weekend of the Challenge Tour, he used 6 sets of darts. He didn't pick his darts up for a week after that. Then he spent a whole day tinkering with his setup and got to a set that he stuck with. And look at the results he's got now. He's winning a lot more. He's getting that winning feeling back. And yeah, there's still 6 months to go before we'll see a Q School bid, if you like, again. But there is still a lot to play for this year, and he could still achieve a lot more.
Anything else for this week?
Just to say, big thank you to our guests for joining us, to Sebastian, to Tony, to Craig, to Justin. We appreciate their time ahead of the World Cup. Big thanks to all of our listeners for listening. Big thanks to Dartwolf, our sponsor. If you want more Dynamite Darts content, go to dartwolf.tv. Give Dartwolf a follow on Twitter at Dartwolf180. Hope you guys have enjoyed our 2 episodes this week. Hope you've been enjoying the darts so far this week, and I'm looking forward to watching the World Cup this weekend. Always one of my favourite events of the year, so looking forward to that. And we'll speak to you guys all next week and look back on who won the World Cup and which one of us had the better predictions.
Yeah, well, we at least one of the predictions you were well off on, but that's a prediction on what I would predict. But yeah, we'll be back next week to recap the World Cup, look ahead to the Dutch World Series event, and start to look ahead for the last few events before the cutoff for the World Match Play, just after the Players' Championship event that will be tomorrow as of the time recording. It'll just be a trio of Players' Championship events in Barnsley and 1 Euro Tour event in Germany left to go. So not that much before that, but a lot to talk about as we get closer to that. Let us know if there's anyone you'd like us to get on, anything you'd like us to talk about, and we'll be back next week. Until then, well, enjoy the darts, and then once you're done enjoying the darts, hang tight.